Hi, everyone. I am Jenna Moulder, and I'm going to be doing my test development project. And I decided to do my test development project on test anxiety. So let's get started. A little bit of an introduction about myself. I have always struggled with test anxiety for like as long as I can remember. I have always studied more than most people, I think, on tests and exams, and often I've lost points on tests because of my test anxiety. There were many times in college when I had to leave the room or did not finish my test because of how much anxiety I was having, unfortunately. So, why create this test? Let's talk about that. I felt like there weren't many tests that calculated test anxiety well, and the ones that I found myself were hard to find or were long and tedious. A couple that I did find um, were the West Side Test Anxiety Scale by R. Driscoll and the Test Anxiety Scale by I.G. Sarazin. And I found a lot of general anxiety tests, as you would imagine. But I only wanted to put one. So I put PsyCom's 3-minute anxiety test and screening. Continued, why create this test? Let's talk about that some more. It's easy to answer. The test that I made is easy to answer. It's accessible for everyone who wants to take it. It specifically measures test anxiety. It's free. It could be given to a mass amount of people. It could be used for clinical intervention or for teachers that want to help students with exams, tests, homework, anything like that could be used for it. And it is not time consuming at all. It is very brief and quick, which I think is important for something like this. And going back to why I create this test, I didn't put this in here, but I think that a lot of people have test anxiety. I've known a lot of people who have test anxiety, especially in my collegiate career. And I think that making a test like this is very important, and especially one that people can have easy access to is very important. Yeah, I think that considering how voluminous test anxiety is, it's important to have a test that matches that. So yeah. Okay, what is test anxiety? Let's talk about that. So test anxiety is a psychological condition in which people experience extreme distress and anxiety in testing situations. And I got that from verywellmind.com. A little bit of background information and research. According to according to the American Test Anxieties Association, 16 to 20% of students have exuded high test anxiety, and 18% struggle with moderately high test anxiety. A little bit more background information and research. Jarrell C. Cassidy, etc., created a study entitled Cognitive Test Anxiety in Academic Performance, a new measure focused on measuring psychometric quality in test anxiety opposed to just existing measures of test anxiety. 168 undergraduate students participated and took 3 course exams in the SAT. Higher amounts of cognitive test anxiety were found to be in correlation with lower test scores. In conclusion, cognitive test anxiety exerts a significant negative impact on academic performance. So, what are my hypotheses? Number one, convergent validity will be shown in positive correlation with my test in the ADHD test. Number two, discriminant validity will be shown with zero relationship between my test and the ASD test. Number three, my test will demonstrate reliable results in test anxiety. Convergent validity. P-Team created a 2-minute quiz for ADHD and ADD on psychcentral.com. A student who is experiencing test anxiety may show signs of ADD and ADHD as well. Discriminant validity. Attitude Magazine created a self-screening test for adults that calculates symptoms of autism spectrum disorder. A student who is experiencing test anxiety is more likely than not going to have symptoms of ASD or autism spectrum disorder. Participants for my test. I would ask 100 undergraduate college students to answer this questionnaire. There will be no gender limitations, so anyone can take it. Measures. The test measures test-taking anxiety in college students. The test was constructed through using the Likert scale, strongly disagree to strongly agree. The test has 10 items questioning the participant on their individual experience with test-taking anxiety. The response format goes off of the Likert scale, going from strongly disagree, neutral, agree, to strongly agree. Each response gets a certain amount of points, 1 through 5, from strongly disagree to strongly agree. And the higher the pointage, the higher the perceived test anxiety. An example item is, are you afraid of failure? My test. My test consists of 10 items based on the Likert scale. The frequency scale includes 1 to 5. Strongly disagree, 1 point. Disagree, 2 points. Neutral, 3 points. Agree, 4 points. Strongly agree, 5 points. I'm going to read off a couple of example items from my test. Do you feel anxious when you are not prepared for a test? Do you sweat while taking tests? Have you ever cried while taking a test? Do you have a fear of failure? Does your heart beat quickly while taking tests? Psych Central's ADHD self-assessment test. This test has 20 items and calculates symptoms of ADHD. The frequency scale includes never, rarely, sometimes, to often. I'm going to now read off a couple of example items from the ADHD test. How often are you easily distracted by external stimuli, like something in your environment or related thoughts? How often do you avoid, dislike, or are reluctant to engage in tasks that require sustained mental effort or thought? How often do you have trouble listening to someone, even when they are when they are speaking directly to you, like your mind is somewhere else? How often do you forget to do something you do all the time, such as missing an appointment or paying a bill? How often are you unable to play or engage in leisurely activities quietly? How often do you have difficulty waiting your turn, such as waiting in a line? How often do you feel restless, like you want to get out and do something? How often do you find yourself talking excessively? Do the symptoms appear in or at least two or more settings? Example, at home and school. The ASD test, the Autism Spectrum Disorder test. Attitude Magazine created a self-assessment test for adults that calculated symptoms of ASD. The test has 16 questions, sorry. Frequency includes very often, often, sometimes, rarely, to never. I'm going to now read off a couple of example items from the test. Do people say that you speak like a robot? Are you always bumping into things or tripping over your own feet? Do you enjoy inventing your own words and expressions that might seem quirky to others? Procedures. Once undergraduate students have chosen to take the test, the students will be invited to take the questionnaire. On the day of testing, participants will be given a pencil and paper and an overview of what is to come of the test, and will be given a speech about informed consent. Tests will be given in the order of my test, or the test anxiety test, the ADHD test, and then the ASD test. When participants have completed the test, the prompter will collect the tests and they will be calculated. Results. An acceptable correlation of my test and the ADHD test would be 0.80, and anything under 0.70 would be an unacceptable correlation. Evidence for convergent validity would be caused by a correlation of at least 0.45. Evidence for discriminant validity would be caused by comparing the test anxiety test, or my test, to the ASD test. A weak correlation will be anything under 0.40. And these are my references. And thank you guys so much for watching.